Someone who does think the place to be is in cable is Chris Dixon. He's the managing director for media investments at Gabelli Group Capital Partners. And Chris, what do you think of our picture? That didn't even look like a human being.
Well,
you know?
I mean, the only thing about the brouhaha is it's really boosting late-night ratings for everybody.
It is. I know. That's the irony of this, is that it's actually helping them now. Okay, so so in terms of what Adam was just saying, look, the place to be is satellite, not cable. You disagree. Why?
Well, I think satellite's a very great place to be, but the real focus right now has got to be on cable. The stocks our portfolio managers are really liking right now are Cablevision, Time Warner Cable, and Comcast. And the reason for that is if you came out of the CES, you now see that we are in a wired and wireless environment with new devices in the home. And you need to get a big, fat pipe that goes into that home and goes out of that home. And the problem for satellite is it doesn't really go both ways. So as you look at the internet and you look for the kind of extraordinary applications that are now going across in these wired and unwired homes, cable's the place to be. It's the fattest pipe. It's the fastest way to get information. And at the same time, these stocks are trading at relatively lows on the historical levels, 5.5 to 6 times cash flow versus peak valuations of north of 12. So cable's a really good place to be right now.
Okay, well then given all that though, you can imagine the guys in Philadelphia at Comcast, right, must be watching this drama going on at NBC. They've just bought this big network, or at least bought a controlling stake in it, and they must be wondering to themselves, what have they gotten themselves into with programming?
Well, I think there's 3 things you have to recognize. The first is that the cable programming side and the cable network side is the majority of the NBC Universal cash flow. So broadcasting is obviously the focus. It's the hot button this week, but it represents less than about 15% of the overall cash flow that's being generated. The second thing is that this was an experiment to really boost earnings, the experiment being the shift from scripted 1-hour, 10 o'clock shows to Leno. And this was a way to really drive earnings. And you were driving earnings at NBC and then, of course, at GE. So with the idea of shifting from GE to Comcast and the focus that folks like Steve Burke and Brian Roberts have on a longer-term cycle, there's every reason to believe that they're willing to look through this, and the scenario and strategy for Comcast would be different than that of GE. And the final point is, this is a cyclical business. It takes 3 to 5 years to turn around prime time.
Come back. Okay, but I've got to ask you, Chris, though, does this mean, though, that Zucker's job is more on the line?
Well, I think it all comes down to what happens this summer. Basically, the NBC is going back to business as usual. There'll be an upfront season. From that, you'll see some new shows that'll be presented to the advertisers, to the affiliates. And if the fall season all of a sudden performs certainly better than it has, there's every reason to believe that by the time this deal is approved, presumably about a year from now, Mr. Zucker could all of a sudden turn it around. So right now, it's in Jeff's hands to fix it.
He's come back before, so don't bet on him. Don't bet him out either, right, Chris? Okay, thanks so much. Chris Dixon of Gabelli & Company.